I was sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor looking out at the Austin skyline when my phone buzzed with a call from Dad. The caller ID made my stomach drop because he never called unless he needed money. His voice sounded different this time, desperate and shaky, in a way I had never heard before. "Maya, you need to come home right now. We need to talk about you quitting your job to help the family," he said, without any greeting. I stared at my marketing director nameplate, confused and hurt. After 3 years of barely speaking, why did they suddenly need me now? Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And please hit that like button and subscribe if this story resonates with you. This is going to be a journey about learning when saying no is actually the most loving thing you can do for yourself. Trust me, you will want to stick around for how this ends. Let me take you back to understand how we got here. I am Maya, 28 years old, and I have worked my way up to marketing director at a tech company here in Austin, Texas. But my story really begins when I was 14 and my mom lost her battle with cancer. Dad was devastated, and honestly, so was I. We were both drowning in grief when Linda came into our lives 2 years later. I was 16 when Dad remarried Linda, and at first, I was genuinely excited. Linda had a son named Tyler, who was 4 years younger than me, making him 12 at the time. I had always wanted a sibling, and the idea of having a mom figure again felt like a gift from the universe. I remember helping Dad pick out flowers for their wedding and feeling hopeful that we could be a real family again. Tyler seemed sweet enough at first. He was this quiet kid who loved video games and had these big brown eyes that reminded me of a puppy. Linda would always talk about how sensitive and artistic he was, how he needed extra understanding because the divorce from his father had been hard on him. I bought into it completely. I wanted this blended family to work so badly that I ignored all the early warning signs. The changes started small. Linda would make Tyler his favorite meals while I was expected to fend for myself or help with cooking. When it came to chores, Tyler never had to lift a finger because Linda said he was going through a difficult adjustment period. Meanwhile, I was doing laundry dishes and keeping my room spotless because I wanted to be the perfect daughter. Tyler got the newest gaming console for Christmas, while I received a generic sweater from the clearance rack. When I asked Dad about the difference, he said Linda handled the gift buying and that Tyler was going through a rough patch. Every excuse always circled back to Tyler needing more support, more understanding, more everything. As Tyler got older, the favoritism became impossible to ignore. He never had to get a part-time job because Linda said it would interfere with his grades even though his grades were mediocre at best. I worked at the local grocery store every weekend and summer to save money for college. When Tyler wanted expensive sneakers or the latest video game, Dad would hand over his credit card without question. When I needed money for school supplies or yearbook photos, I had to present a detailed budget and explanation. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I had worked incredibly hard to graduate as valedictorian, and I was so proud when I got accepted to the University of Texas with a partial academic scholarship. The day I got my acceptance letter, I ran home bursting with excitement, ready to share the news with my family. I found Dad and Linda in the kitchen, huddled over some paperwork. When I announced my acceptance, Dad gave me a distracted, "That is great, honey," while Linda barely looked up. Then Tyler walked in, complaining about his phone being old, and suddenly, both adults were focused entirely on him discussing which new iPhone model he should get. That night at dinner, the conversation centered on Tyler's upcoming driver's test and which car they should buy him. When I tried to bring up my college acceptance again, Linda interrupted to say that Tyler needed new cleats for football. The message was crystal clear. My achievements were background noise, while Tyler's most basic needs were front-page news. High school graduation day was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life. I graduated magna cum laude and had earned a spot in the honors program at UT. I kept looking into the audience during the ceremony, searching for my family's faces in the crowd. Other graduates were waving to their proud parents, receiving cheers and applause. My section remained silent. After the ceremony, I found Dad and Linda in the parking lot. They had missed the entire thing because Tyler had a football game for his junior varsity team. Not even varsity, junior varsity. Dad awkwardly handed me a card and said they were proud of me, but Tyler's game had run late. Linda added that they had gotten it all on video anyway, as if watching their 12-year-old play in a meaningless spring football game was somehow equivalent to seeing their daughter graduate with top honors. I stood there in my graduation cap and gown, watching other families take photos and celebrate together, and felt completely invisible. That night, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to Austin for college, and I was going to build a life where my worth was not determined by how little space I took up. College in Austin was like stepping into sunlight after years in a dark room. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who saw my potential and celebrated my successes. I threw myself into my studies and internships, determined to build the kind of life I had always dreamed of. I started as a marketing assistant at a small tech startup during my junior year. My professors had recommended me based on my grades and work ethic, and I was hungry to prove myself. I worked evenings and weekends learning everything I could about digital marketing analytics and brand strategy. By the time I graduated, I had been promoted to marketing coordinator. The company was growing rapidly, and my supervisor, Sarah, became an amazing mentor. She saw something in me that my own family had never recognized. Within 18 months, I was promoted to senior marketing coordinator, and by my third year, I had earned the title of marketing director. Meanwhile, back in Houston, Tyler was coasting through his final year of high school with no plans for college or work. During our infrequent phone calls, Dad would mention that Tyler was figuring things out and needed time to find his passion. Linda had convinced Dad that pressuring Tyler would damage his self-esteem, so they continued to support him financially while he played video games and hung out with friends. I tried to maintain some connection with my family during those 3 years. I called on birthdays and holidays, sent Christmas gifts, and even started sending $500 home each month. I told myself it was just helping out being a good daughter. But looking back, I realized I was still trying to buy their love and attention. The money I sent home was supposed to help with household expenses, but I started noticing things during my brief visits. Tyler had acquired an elaborate gaming setup with multiple monitors, a racing chair, and professional-grade equipment that must have cost thousands of dollars. His closet was full of expensive sneakers and designer clothes. When I asked about it, Linda said Tyler had been saving money from odd jobs, which was clearly a lie since Tyler never worked a day in his life. My own apartment in Austin was modest but comfortable. I had worked hard for everything I owned, from my furniture to my car to my small but growing savings account. I was proud of my independence and the career I had built from nothing. But there was always this nagging feeling that I was missing something, that my family was moving on without me. The calls from home became less frequent. When I did talk to Dad, the conversations were surface level and rushed. He would ask about work in a polite but disinterested way, then quickly shift to talking about Tyler's latest interests or Linda's opinions about various topics. I felt like a distant acquaintance rather than his daughter. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in back-to-back meetings when my assistant knocked on my door to say my father was on the line with an emergency. My heart started racing as I picked up the phone, imagining car accidents or heart attacks. Dad's voice was shaking when he told me that Tyler was seriously ill and needed full-time care. He said the doctors were not sure what was wrong, but Tyler was too weak to take care of himself. Linda was beside herself with worry, and they were both too old and tired to handle the level of care he needed. "You are the only one who can save Tyler," Dad said, his voice breaking. "You need to quit your job and come home to take care of your brother. We know it is a lot to ask, but family comes first." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. After 3 years of minimal contact, they were asking me to abandon the career I had built to become Tyler's caregiver. When I asked why they could not hire a professional nurse or caregiver, Linda got on the phone crying and said they could not afford it, that they needed someone who truly loved Tyler. The guilt was overwhelming. Here I was, living my successful life in Austin while my stepbrother was supposedly dying and my family was falling apart. Maybe this was my chance to finally be the daughter they needed to prove that I could put family first when it really mattered. I told them I would drive home that weekend to assess the situation and figure out how to help. As I hung up the phone, I felt a familiar knot in my stomach, the same feeling I used to get as a teenager when I knew I was about to disappoint them somehow. The 3-hour drive from Austin to Houston felt like the longest journey of my life. I kept imagining Tyler pale and weak, maybe hooked up to machines or struggling to breathe. I mentally calculated how much money I had saved and whether I could afford to take a leave of absence from work instead of quitting entirely. When I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, everything looked exactly the same. The lawn was perfectly manicured, Dad's truck was washed and shiny, and Linda's flower beds were blooming beautifully. For a house dealing with a medical crisis, everything seemed remarkably normal. I walked through the front door to find Tyler stretched out on the living room couch looking tired, but hardly at death's door. When he saw me, he actually sat up and smiled, asking if I had brought him anything from Austin. This was not the behavior of someone who was seriously ill. Linda immediately launched into a dramatic explanation of Tyler's condition. He had been feeling weak and tired for weeks, losing weight and having no appetite. The doctors had run tests, but had not found anything definitive yet. She painted a picture of a mysterious illness that required constant monitoring and care. But as I spent more time observing, Tyler, things did not add up. He was playing video games, texting with friends, and eating normally when he thought no one was watching. When Dad and Linda left the room, he seemed perfectly fine, even asking me about my job and whether I made good money. That evening, Dad sat me down for what he called a serious family meeting. Linda was dabbing at her eyes with tissues while Tyler sat quietly in the corner, looking appropriately weak and tired. Dad explained that they had given this a lot of thought, and the only solution was for me to quit my job and move back home. Your salary as marketing director would be enough to support the household, Dad said, and Tyler needs someone young and energetic to help him through this difficult time. You are his sister Maya. Who else is going to take care of him? The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This was not about Tyler's health. This was about money and convenience. They had realized that my income could solve their financial problems while simultaneously providing them with a live-in caregiver for their adult son who had never learned to be independent. I felt a surge of emotions I had not experienced since I was a teenager, watching Tyler get his BMW while I took the bus to my part-time job. But this time was different. I was not a powerless kid anymore. I was a successful adult with my own life, my own career, and my own voice. I need to see Tyler's medical records, I said calmly. Linda immediately became defensive, saying that I did not trust their word and that families should not need documentation to help each other. Dad tried to redirect the conversation, insisting that the details did not matter as much as Tyler needing help. I stood my ground. If you want me to quit my career to provide medical care, I need to understand exactly what I would be treating. After an hour of back and forth, Linda finally admitted that Tyler had been diagnosed with severe flu that had left him feeling run down. There was no mysterious illness, no life-threatening condition, just a 24-year-old man who had gotten sick and decided he needed to be babied through his recovery. The real truth came out slowly, like air leaking from a balloon. Dad and Linda were struggling financially because they had been supporting Tyler's lifestyle for 6 years since high school graduation. The money I had been sending home was not helping with household expenses. It was funding Tyler's gaming addiction, his expensive clothes, and his nights out with friends. Linda broke down and confessed that they were behind on the mortgage and credit card payments. Dad had been forced to take early retirement due to budget cuts at his company, and their only income was his reduced pension and Linda's part-time job at a department store. They had been living off credit cards and the money I sent, but it was not enough anymore. "We thought if you moved back home, your salary could cover everything," Linda said through tears. "And Tyler really does need someone to take care of him. He has never lived independently, and we do not know how to teach him now." The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me to sacrifice the career I had built through years of hard work to subsidize their poor financial decisions and enable Tyler's continued dependence. They had raised him to be helpless, and now they expected me to spend my life managing the consequences of their parenting choices. I looked at Tyler, who had been unusually quiet during this conversation. "Tyler, what do you think about getting a job and contributing to the household expenses?" I asked directly. He shrugged and said that he had been looking, but nothing seemed interesting enough. He claimed that most jobs were beneath his skill level, even though he had no education beyond high school and no work experience. He genuinely believed that he deserved to be supported indefinitely, while he figured out what he wanted to do with his life. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling and processing everything I had learned. The glow-in-the-dark stars I had put up in middle school were still there, a reminder of the hopeful girl I used to be. I thought about all the times I had prioritized their needs over my own, all the money I had sent home, all the achievements I had celebrated alone. I realized that I had been enabling this dynamic just as much as Dad and Linda had. By sending money and staying quietly out of their lives, I had made it easier for them to continue treating Tyler like a child while treating me like a bank account they could access when needed. The next morning, I called a family meeting of my own. I had spent hours thinking about what I wanted to say, and I was ready to set some boundaries that should have been established years ago. "I will not be quitting my job," I announced. "Tyler is 24 years old, which makes him old enough to work, pay rent, and take care of himself when he has the flu." Linda immediately started crying and accusing me of being selfish. She said that the Maya she knew would never abandon family in their time of need. Dad looked disappointed and asked me to reconsider, saying that Tyler was still finding himself and needed more time. I pulled out my phone and showed them bank statements proving that I had sent them $18,000 over the past 3 years. "This is what I have contributed to this household," I said. "Tyler, can you show me what you have contributed?" Tyler could not answer because the answer was nothing. He had contributed absolutely nothing, while living rent-free, eating food he did not pay for, and spending money on luxury items that my hard work had helped fund. I continued, "Tyler, you have 30 days to find a job, any job. If you are not employed and contributing to household expenses, by then I will stop sending money entirely." Linda exploded, calling me cruel and heartless. She said that I had changed, that success had made me cold and selfish. Dad tried to play peacemaker, suggesting that we could find some middle ground where I could help without sacrificing my career. But I was done negotiating. "This is not about being mean," I said. "This is about Tyler learning to be an adult and all of us learning what healthy family relationships actually look like." I told them that I would no longer be sending monthly money unless Tyler was working and contributing his share. I would not be moving back home to enable his dependence. And I would not be sacrificing my career to solve problems that they had created through years of poor financial decisions and overindulgence. The room fell silent. Linda stormed out. Dad looked defeated, and Tyler seemed genuinely shocked that anyone would expect him to work for a living. But I felt lighter than I had in years. The first few weeks after that confrontation were brutal. I questioned myself constantly, wondering if I had been too harsh, or if I was really as selfish as Linda claimed. There were nights when I stared at my phone, wanting to call and apologize, to tell them I would send money just to make peace. Instead, I found a therapist in Austin who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. Dr. Rodriguez helped me understand that what I was experiencing was not cruelty, but self-preservation. She explained that healthy families do not require one member to sacrifice their entire life to enable another member's dysfunction. Through therapy, I began to understand the pattern that had been established since Linda entered our lives. Tyler was positioned as the fragile one who needed protection and support, while I was cast as the strong one who should be grateful for any attention and willing to sacrifice for the family's greater good. But you were a child too, Dr. Rodriguez reminded me during one session. You also deserved protection and support and unconditional love. The fact that you were capable and resilient did not mean you needed those things any less. I threw myself into work with renewed energy. My company was launching a major product line, and I poured all of my focus into making it successful. The campaign I developed exceeded all projections and earned recognition from our parent company. My supervisor recommended me for a promotion to Senior Marketing Director, which came with a significant salary increase and expanded responsibilities. For the first time in my adult life, I was not sending money home or worrying about my family's financial drama. I used the extra money to travel, to invest in my retirement, and to build the emergency fund I had always wanted but never been able to afford. I also started building genuine friendships in Austin. Without the constant guilt and obligation weighing on me, I had more emotional energy to invest in relationships with people who appreciated me for who I was, not what I could provide for them. About 3 months after my ultimatum, Dad called with an update. Tyler had finally gotten a part-time job at an electronics store. He was not thrilled about it, and he complained constantly about having to work weekends and holidays, but he was earning a paycheck. Linda was still cold toward me, Dad said, but she was starting to acknowledge that maybe Tyler did need to grow up. The mortgage was still behind, but they were working with the bank on a payment plan. Dad sounded tired, but less desperate than he had during our last conversation. I think I owe you an apology, Dad said quietly. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that you were my daughter too. I got so focused on keeping peace with Linda and making sure Tyler was okay that I stopped seeing how much you were giving up for us. It was not a complete apology or a full acknowledgement of the years of favoritism and financial exploitation, but it was a start. I told Dad that I loved him and wanted to have a relationship with him, but it needed to be based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. 6 months later, Tyler was working full-time and had even started paying Dad and Linda a small amount of rent. He was still living at home and still complained about having to work, but he was functioning like a basic adult for the first time in his life. Linda and I were not close, and I suspected we never would be. But she had stopped actively guilt-tripping me about money, which was progress. Dad and I talked more regularly, and our conversations had started including questions about my life, my interests, and my happiness, rather than just my bank account. Most importantly, I had learned to recognize my own worth. I no longer felt guilty for having boundaries or for prioritizing my own well-being. I had learned that love without respect is not really love at all, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's dysfunction. The promotion to Senior Marketing Director came with an office that had an even better view of Austin. I kept a small photo of my mom on my desk, and sometimes I would look at it and imagine how proud she would be of the woman I had become. Not because of my career success, but because I had finally learned to value myself the way she had always valued me. I learned that being strong did not mean I had to carry everyone else's burdens. I learned that being family did not mean accepting mistreatment or financial exploitation. Most importantly, I learned that setting boundaries was not selfish. It was necessary for any relationship to be healthy and sustainable. Looking back, I understand that Dad and Linda were struggling and made poor choices out of desperation and misguided love. Tyler was a product of their enabling, raised to believe that he deserved support without contribution. But understanding their motivations did not mean I had to sacrifice my life to fix their problems. The little girl who used to stare at those glow-in-the-dark stars and dream of a loving family had finally found what she was looking for. It just turned out to be different than what she had imagined. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes boundaries are the foundation that healthy relationships are built on. And sometimes, the family that supports your dreams is not the one you were born into, but the one you choose to build. If you have ever found yourself in a situation where family members expected you to sacrifice your success for their comfort, I want you to know that you are not selfish for wanting to protect what you have built. You are not cruel for expecting adults to act like adults. And you are not wrong for believing that you deserve relationships based on love and respect rather than guilt and obligation. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who were used to taking advantage of your generosity? Share your thoughts in the comments below because I would love to hear about your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content about navigating complicated family relationships. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this story, please share it with them. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this story reminds you that you have every right to protect your peace and prioritize your own well-being.